host of consumer names too.
Yeah, that exactly was, the big talking point of this week itself. When did you see HUL fall 8% post numbers, right? And, it's not a dinky toy stock which can just fall like that. It's one of the biggest falls. It really brought out some important diversions in the consumer sector itself, the schism, that, as you call it. Let's talk a little about that itself. So, you start with the demand dilemma. Everyone's talking about rural being weak earlier and now seeing some gradual recovery in rural. But what came out of the blue was urban weakness. So HUL, for instance, called out moderating urban growth versus gradual recovery in rural. ITC itself said subdued demand conditions witnessed during the quarter. Nestle went out, Suresh Narayanan said that, there was shrinking middle class impacting FMCG sales. Tata Consumer did say that there has been, some impact because of excessive rains, food inflation and flooding. And Godrej Consumer this morning joined us and said that there has been mild stress in urban demand. United Spirits itself saw a decline in their popular volumes, even as Prestige and above fell about 3.7%. Pidilite said early to call whether this weakness is temporary or structural. And DMart was the first one to call out the quick commerce impact on its sales in metro. Why is urban so important versus rural? Because urban sales account for 65% of the value and 35% of FMCG volumes, whereas rural accounts for 65% volumes and 35% value. So if you're seeking value growth, you have to look at urban, and if you're seeking volume growth, you have to look at rural itself. And that's not all. The presentation of ITC tells you that there have been some concerns when it comes to urban demand as well. Food CPI for September at 9.2% has been sticky. PVs and two-wheelers have seen a decline of almost 19 and 9% respectively in the previous month. We've also seen GST collection at a 39-month low, with fuel consumption lower by about 1.7%. All of these things are pointing towards weakness in the lower half of the K. But twist all of this around, and this is where the schism gets a little more interesting. Blinkit saw revenue growth of 129%, Zomato saw growth of 55%, Nykaa saw revenue growth in mid-20s, and at the same time, outside the listed space, we had big concerts during the quarter which also sold out. You have Coldplay, Diljit Dosanjh, JP Dillon, the likes of all of them selling tickets worth nearly 350 to 400 crore rupees, with 1 million people waiting in the lines as well. So CLSE had an interesting note which said that maybe the consumption patterns of India itself are changing right now. So then that leaves us with two questions. One, is the lower end of the middle class sinking a lot further and we're just left with a steepening K curve for our markets? And the second question is, are FMCG sales still the best barometer for consumption in an economy, or have consumption patterns changed so much that we don't need to look at FMCG sales anymore? Those are two interesting and important questions. Let's go across to Prashant for the same. Prashant, staples, while they have been resilient, they are talking about some sort of demand concerns in, urban areas. What's happening here? I mean, is the wealth effect now waning out with the weakness in the market?
So, Mangalam, definitely there is from commentaries of all the consumers